Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and this was me headed to my laundromat last year after the fire department said they had to go in and shut down our pipes because they had frozen and they were spraying water everywhere. And in this video, I'm going to talk about some of our other crazy frozen pipe issues we've had on properties we own and how to prevent frozen pipe crazy issues, as well as some other stories from cold weather problems in Colorado as a landlord. So cold weather is not your friend as a landlord. It can cause so many problems, and even with tons of experience like we have, we still have issues and problems that arise when we have super cold temperatures. So this last weekend, we got down to -8, -10. It was pretty cold. Tonight, we're supposed to get down to -11, and no matter how much you prepare, there always seems to be problems and issues when you have super cold weather like this. So this is a laundromat, and we had a pipe along the wall. You can see this is where water was spraying on our ceiling. That was pretty amazing. And luckily, there was someone in the laundromat who heard it. They heard the water spraying in back, and they called the fire department. They came in. They called me, and I gave them the code. They got back there. They shut the water down. So it could have been way, way, way worse, but it still made a big mess, and we had a lot of cleanup to do after this situation. So having pipes along walls is one of the biggest causes of frozen pipes. Unfortunately, you can't always avoid that. There are just some situations where you have them, they're going to be there, but there are some things you can do to try and mitigate disaster, like insulating them, heat wrapping them, insulating the walls, things like that. Those pipes were fine because that wall was insulated. It was the pipes towards the bottom that were shooting straight up where there was less insulation, and that is why they got cold and had issues. So here I was trying to figure out what froze, what had the problem, what had the issue, and you just follow the ice because it was cold in this room. You can see down there, that's just concrete, so there wasn't any insulation down there. It got way, way colder. The other issue we realized was that there was really no heat in this back room. We had heat in the laundromat, and this room was kind of connected to the laundromat, but it was just kind of wafting its way back there, not enough to really make a difference back here. So we did figure out a way to get some heat back here as well, which obviously helps with frozen pipes too. So like I said, this could have been way worse. Luckily someone was there. Luckily it didn't happen at like 2 a.m. or something like that, where it just blew water all night long and this whole room was just a giant ice box. I mean, it would have made a really cool video to see a giant ice box back there, but I'm not sure if it would have made up for all the damaged equipment and different stuff, because that was our car wash equipment room too. And that equipment can be very expensive and very costly. So if you're wondering, this laundromat is for sale. We fixed that water line issue, the heat issue. Haven't had too many problems on that part lately. But yeah, that was quite the experience. Now this was another issue we had at one of our properties. This is our shop where we store a lot of our materials. And this was also during that same kind of cold snap, I believe, last year. And this one was not good either. As you can see, we had so much water in here, ruined a lot of supplies, a lot of materials. And this one came from an issue where this building is not heated, so it's just used for storage. However, there's a bathroom in here, and the bathroom in there is heated, and there's a big sign that says, you know, shut the door, make sure the heat's on. Well, I don't know if that door got left open. I don't know if the heat stopped working or what, but somehow the pipes in that bathroom froze, and as you saw, thawed out and flooded the whole building. Now, there wasn't anybody here for a little while, as you can see, so unfortunately in this situation we had water everywhere. And not only do you have the damage from the water, but that's a pretty hefty water bill too when you spray that much water and have it running constantly for that long. So multiple reasons why you do not want to flood your house or building or business, not just the damage, but the water too. So we're going to talk about a few things besides just the flooding and issues here. What about insurance, right? So a lot of people say, well, just have insurance covered. Just have insurance come in. They'll pay for it. You can see right there. I think the line froze for the toilet, popped off there, and that was just spraying everywhere. So we could call insurance for this situation, right? We can have an adjuster come out. We could have them give us a bid to, they give us a estimate for what it would cost to clean up the water, replace the things we had in here, all of that. Will they give us some money? Yes, they will give us some money. Hard to say how much they would give us in this situation. Maybe they give us $5,000, maybe $10,000, maybe $15,000 for this. Would that money be nice to have? Yes, it would. The problem is when you have insurance claims, especially water insurance claims, it can wreck the rest of your insurance life. So what I mean is insurance companies keep track of all the claims against you. And water claims are the worst claims to have against you. If you have a couple of those in your name, a lot of companies will just drop you. They won't insure you anymore. Your rates could go up significantly. So when we have 30, 40 properties, commercial properties, residential properties, and if our rates go up on all of them, it's not worth taking that insurance claim to have the rates go up on all our properties. It's not worth taking that insurance claim to possibly lose insurance on a bunch of properties and have to go to another company that might be way more expensive. Now, if we had a $100,000 claim or a $50,000 claim or a house that burned down or a liability issue where someone gets hurt, then the insurance would definitely be well worth it. But in a situation like this where it's relatively minor damage, it's not a big issue, you're usually better off not doing an insurance claim because it will hurt you so much in the long run having those claims. Now, if you have just one water claim, it might not hurt you that much. But if you've got a few of them and then you get a few more, it can really, really make things more expensive or make you uninsurable. Now, one thing I will say about that, if there are insurance experts out there, please correct me too, because I'm always talking about stuff from my experience, and sometimes people have different experience, and sometimes my experience might not line up with what is supposed to happen, even though it did happen. So I'm always open to other experiences and knowledge out there. But if, let's say you have damage from a hailstorm, or you've got flooding from rain, something like that, and it's a massive rainstorm, in some of those cases, your area might be listed as like a catastrophic storm, something like that. That might be the wrong term. And so if you file a claim during one of those events, it won't hurt you. Like, that's not considered like a normal claim. It's considered part of a massive catastrophic damage. And so since everybody, or not everybody, but so many people had damage in that same storm, those claims don't hurt you as much. So if it's a rainstorm, a hailstorm, a roof damage, and you wait for one of those events, it won't hurt you nearly as much as, say, just like random frozen pipes from it being too cold outside. And I guess it's possible, if you lived in Texas where they had the crazy cold and frozen pipes everywhere, maybe they listed that as one of those catastrophic events too, and that wouldn't hurt people in that case. If you're a homeowner and you have a house and you've got frozen pipes and it destroys your sheetrock and drywall and you've got to cut holes everywhere, it's probably worth it to file a claim because of all the damage you've got and money you're going to spend replacing all that. But in my case, and in this case, a lot of times it's just not worth it to file the insurance claim and go that route. Now, it's not just me who has these problems either. So this is actually my sister's house, and she owns some rentals. This is a college rental, so she primarily rents to college students, and they had a flood here as well. As you can see, the water coming out of the house, which is never a good sign when you pull up to your house and there's water on the sidewalk in the front step because it's been pouring out. And my sister has had multiple issues with college rentals and cold weather and flooding. And so the thing is when you're renting to college students, a lot of times it's their first time ever living on their own or living without, older experienced people with them. And so they might not know everything to do in a house. And my sister tries to educate them, tries to send out letters, notices, all types of things to warn them and help her, but they don't always listen or pay attention. So what happens is, you can see the water coming through on the ceiling right there. A lot of times college students go home for break, right? Over winter break, you've got your semester, you've got 2 weeks off, who knows what it is. A lot of them go home, they go for Christmas, and they leave the house. Well, a lot of students, being penny pinchers and not having a lot of money, think, hey, let's turn the heat off to save some money while we go home. And that's not good for houses. That is very bad for houses in cold weather. You turn the heat off, there's no heat, your pipes freeze. And that's something else to consider too, is that if you have really cold weather and your pipes freeze, you might not have water and bursting pipes right away. They don't burst until it thaws out and warms up. So if you have a cold spell for a few days and it's 20 degrees in that house for 3 days, there won't be any water in there. It's not until it warms up, that the ice thaws out, and then all of a sudden you've got water dumping in the house. So just because you're make it through a cold spell, for the first day or two, doesn't mean you're home free. So you've got to pay attention and really keep tabs on things in this really cold weather, not just during the cold weather, but after it as well. Like that previous property where we saw the water come in, that was a good, I feel like 3 or 4 days after the cold spell happened that flooded. So that's something else to think about. Now this property, I can't remember if a neighbor saw water coming out or what it was, but there was a lot of water and it was dumping down the walls. It came from a bathroom upstairs where a pipe broke. The basement was full of water. So there was a lot of problems in here, and she got people out right away to take care of it as quickly as possible, because that's something else. When you have this amount of water in a house, you can see the water on the windows and the condensation, the humidity levels go crazy. And it being cold is actually a good thing with that much water in a house, because if it's warm or hot, that's when you get mold starting to grow. So if you flood a house and it's cold and you have lots of water in it, you might not want to try and bump the heat up to 90 degrees right away. You want to get the water out first. That's your main goal. Get as much water out as you can, as soon as you possibly can, and then worry about the heat and fixing the issues later on. Because water in a house, humidity in a house, causes massive problems. Heck, we had a house, a triplex, that had mold and issues on the wall, not because it was cold outside, but because the tenant turned the heat up to like 85 degrees, had it blasting all the time, had tons of humidity in there, and just kept having mold and issues. And we told them to turn the heat down. They wouldn't do it. Eventually they moved to a different place. We looked for everything, tried to find issues, found nothing wrong, never had a problem again, because the next tenants kept the house at a reasonable 70, 72, and didn't have issues. But if you have lots of moisture in there, don't pump the heat up as high as you can to try and get the moisture out. Then you could actually be causing more problems with mold and growth in the walls, and you can't always see that either. It could be behind the walls, and you don't want those situations. So if you have a situation like this and there's water, obviously you want to get, if you have a ton of water, think about hiring a restoration company. I said think about it, because they're very, very expensive. They rely on charging your insurance company literally $10,000 to $15,000 to do this work. So make sure you want to go that insurance claim route, and your insurance will cover it before you hire them. If you don't want to go that route, you can hire a plumber a lot of times to help you out with this, but you just want to get the water sucked up. Depending on how much you have, shop vacs can sometimes do the trick. There should be drains in your basement. Hopefully those are working, and you can see so much water in this situation. You want to wipe down your walls and ceilings if there's water everywhere. But then you also want to get as many high-powered fans in there as you can to circulate air, and dehumidifiers. So you can rent dehumidifiers from rental stores, Home Depot. You can also rent the fans you need as well. But you want to get those in there ASAP and get those running. and those will help dry everything out, get the humidity out of the air. It will also suck the humidity kind of a little bit out of the walls and stuff if you dry out the air enough. And then once you get it dried out, then you worry about, obviously you want to turn the water off before any of this happens, so you don't continuously have water pumping into the house. That's your first step. But after that, dry the house out, then think about getting the heat and pipes fixed and all of that done. But you really, really want to dry the house out first so that you can try to avoid any mold issues, because those can be, some of your most costly damage if you've got to go back in there and tear out drywall and sheetrock and all of that. Now, if you've got drywall and sheetrock that has gotten wet, and I don't mean just like from moisture in the air, but I mean water running on it, it's damp, you're going to want to cut that out. You're going to want to, they call it a flood cut sometimes, where you see a house where like the bottom 2 feet of sheetrock or drywall is cut out. That's because there was water in the basement or on the floor. The drywall, sucks up that water. And so you want to cut well above where that water line was. Get that out of there. That helps get moisture out of the house. It also prevents mold growth, and it prevents just the rest of your wall sucking up water. So there's definitely a few things you can do to preventively help the property, help the situation in the long run from being way, 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 way worse. Now, this was another fun situation where the tenants may have flooded the house on purpose. We're not sure, but there were signs that they possibly wanted to just do as much damage as they could. So we bought this house as a flip. It had tenants in there. As soon as we bought it, they weren't paying rent. They had a lot of, communication issues. We weren't sure what was going on. But eventually, I think we filed an eviction notice. They left. They did not tell us they left. So they just left. They got out of there, moved out of there, didn't tell us. And a lot of people say, well, you should be doing inspections. Well, you can't really inspect a property every week or every day. You don't want to bug the tenants all the time. In fact, it's not legal to continuously bug them all the time in a lot of places. And you have to rely on the tenants to help you out a little bit. Well, eventually we figured out they were gone. We posted notices. They didn't answer the door, didn't answer the phone. And so we went in there, had it rekeyed, and it was flooded. The pipes had frozen, and it had decent hardwood floors. They were just ruined. We had to get rid of them. We had to do so much more work here than we thought we were going to have to do, because they turned the heat off and left all the windows open in Colorado in winter. So again, don't know why anybody would do that. Don't know if they thought, oh, our house is real smelly, let's open the windows. Oh, it's just really hot in here in the winter, let's turn off the heat. That's probably not something someone's going to do. There's a chance they said, oh, we don't like investors, or we're mad that we have to move, although from what we heard, they're moving anyway. We're just going to try and flood this house on purpose. So one of the water lines by the water heater burst. You can see it kind of right there where it pushed through the sheetrock and sprayed into the house. There was tons of water in the crawl space as well, so there were issues there. And so, no heat and windows open are a great way to freeze pipes in Colorado when it's cold out. Now, how do you prevent this situation? This is a tough one. I mean, it's hard to imagine where someone wants to do this on purpose. It would be hard to prove, but technically if they did do it on purpose, that would probably be classified as vandalism and illegal. They might get arrested or go to jail if you could prove it. That's the problem, is how do you prove that? But in the end, we had to go through, do that flood cut I was talking about, where we cut out a bunch of drywall, took up all the flooring, had to kind of open up, air out the crawl space, get fans going down there. It was a lot of work. And this was a property that really didn't need that much work until this happened. And again, could we have filed insurance on this one? Yes. Did we? No. It was one of those, it was iffy. It's like, should we do it? Should we not do it? In the end, I just decided the risk of losing insurance, of having all our claim or deductible, whatever, policies go up, was not worth the money we might get. So that's what we ended up doing. Did the work, got it done, and eventually got this house fixed up and sold. Now, we also had some foundation issues, well, kind of make-believe foundation issues, where we had a buyer ready to go. His inspector said it needed a bunch of work. We had one foundation company come out here and say, oh, it needs $84,000 in work. We have to lift the house and put in piers. Had another foundation company come by and say, oh, no, you need one beam and everything else is good. It's $5,000. So you get a lot of different stuff to take care of in real estate. That's for sure. But eventually got this house fixed up, sold, and moved on from this situation. But when somebody may or may not try and freeze the house, that makes it tricky. And the other tricky thing is, you could see there was still a lot of stuff here and vehicles here, and they came and got their vehicles and stuff from the outside. So it's like, how do you know they moved out? How, even with an inspection, you can't really tell for sure if they're there or not. So this was definitely a tricky one. Now we have another house where we flooded it while we were working on it. And honestly, I don't remember exactly what happened. I do remember this is the drywall house where the Home Depot guy dropped off drywall at the wrong house, spilled it, quit, took off, and left the drywall in someone else's yard. That's another story. But let's listen and figure out what happened. This house has been gutted. We had to redo all the electrical because it's knob and tube. And we showed up with our contractor just to look at how we're going to rearrange the basement. And the door smashed into the brick ledge right there, shattered everywhere, and that's not a big deal. So I'll show you the bigger deal as we walk in here. We walked in, and there's water shooting out of a broken pipe. So the heater was brand new, but the electrical has to be redone, and they had it set up for the heater to be plugged into an outlet right now, and for some reason it got unplugged and was not working, and then the water was still on, which is another learning experience, we shall say. If you've got a house that's gutted, it's winter in Colorado, and you don't need the water on, turn it off at the main. Don't ever leave that water on. You can avoid things like this. And I'll patch in another video here to show you, but it was really pouring down before. And it could have been a lot worse because it's actually been fairly warm the last couple days. Actually, probably what happened was it froze, and then once it warmed up, the water in the pipe thawed, and then it started leaking everywhere. So it could have been a lot worse because it was pouring out pretty good, and this basement could be completely full. And the bathtub luckily caught quite a bit of it. But as you can see, it's a lot of water. So our contractor is going to come get all the water up, try and dry everything out. We may rent a dehumidifier, try and get a bunch of the moisture out of the walls, studs, drywall, avoid getting a bunch of mold and different stuff down here. Luckily, it is gutted already, so it could have been much worse if we had sheetrock, drywall, kitchen, things like that down here. So, quick update as well. I'll walk you through. This is a basement unit, so separate unit. The kitchen was here, bathroom there, obviously. What you did before. So obviously that wasn't a good situation, but again, it could have been way, way worse if that happened after we had fixed up and redone this basement, the upstairs, etc. So we lucked out. And I do like to try and look on the positive side of things and not just think about all the bad things that happened, because otherwise I'd be a very depressed person being in real estate. So, but we did learn a lesson here, and that's something we've always tell our contractors over and over again. If it's winter in Colorado, even summer in Colorado, because you never know what's going to happen, try to shut the water off at houses unless you are actively using it. Now, something else. If you are actively using the toilet, turn the water on to flush the toilet and turn it back off again, because that is also one of our pet peeves, when people like to use the toilet and not flush it, and then a week later, it doesn't smell very good. So anyway, sidetrack, side note, but There are some things you can do to mitigate these disasters and help, not have quite as much of a mess if the water had been off. Now, when you come into the house and turn the water back on, it probably would have been shooting water everywhere, but you would have turned it off right away, not had nearly as much water all over the place. Now, there is something else you can do too. If you've got properties that you know are going to be vacant, won't be lived in, and you're going to have cold temperatures, you can turn the water off, you can make sure the heat's on, but in some cases, you might not have heat. Maybe there's a problem, an issue, you're working on it. I used to sell bank-owned foreclosures where they didn't have working furnaces sometimes, or the power was shut off sometimes, and they didn't want to flood their houses, obviously. So what they would do is they would winterize them. And most bank-owned foreclosures are winterized in Colorado from October 15th to April 15th. And what you do is you have a plumber go in there. He disconnects a plumbing line at some point, blows air through those lines with an air compressor, tries to get all the water out of the lines. He pours antifreeze in your toilets and sinks to keep the P-traps from freezing or water in your toilets from freezing. And you put tape all over them saying do not use them, because that happens all the time too. But you tape them shut so they can't be used, and that definitely helps mitigate the frozen problems of pipe issues and damage that can be caused. Now here is another cold weather situation that wasn't really our fault. It wasn't water related, but it was so frustrating. One of the most frustrating things that's happened in my real estate career. Now, sorry, you're going to have to look at me from a couple of years ago while I'm talking and saying different things. It doesn't match up, but I'm not cropping myself out of this video right now. So this is the Ocho before we painted it, put on a new roof, fixed it up a bunch. And 2 years ago, we got a call from some tenants that their heat wasn't working. We're like, okay, we're trying to figure it out. We sent a plumber over, heating guy over. They said, there's no power. We're like, what are you talking about? There's no power. The tenants pay their own electric bill. There's 8 different meters. How is there no power? Well, it turns out the boiler that works for the whole building, there's a hot water boiler that produces heat for all the units, had a separate electric meter with Xcel, who's the electric company in Colorado, and that electric meter was on a commercial account, not residential, which is important, and that commercial account had not been switched over to us when we bought the property. So we had switched over all the utilities, gas, electric, water, all of that was switched over. We had some vacant units. Xcel switched those units over to us. If there were tenants in them, they kept them in the tenant's name. Well, there was a commercial account that Xcel did not switch over, and that commercial account went to the boiler. It should not have been commercial. We don't know why it was commercial, but because it was commercial, nobody decided to look it up at this property. They just looked up the residential side, and apparently they're 2 completely different sides. So when we switched utilities, Xcel didn't switch that over to us. So after like 6 months, they turned the power off because we didn't pay it. They never left any notices on the property, never contacted us. Maybe they sent notices to the previous owner and he never told us. That could have happened. But that bill was never paid, and they turned off power. Now, it is illegal in Colorado to turn off power in winter on residential properties. They did it anyway because it was a commercial account, and they claimed it wasn't a residential building. Now, I have a video where I was on the phone with them forever trying to explain all this to them, that it was 8 units that had no power. It was the middle of winter. They were freezing. There were families there. It was not commercial. I told this to them for like half an hour, and their answer was, sorry, there's nothing we can do. You'll have to wait till next week, because it was like a Saturday when this happened, and they didn't want to work on the weekend. So it was crazy. So we ended up having one of our guys, or someone, I forgot who it was exactly, run an extension cord from one of the units to plug in the boiler, because the units all had power. They all had power. There was no problem there. It's just the one boiler room. And we got the boiler running. And then we also heard, I heard this later on through the grapevine, someone from Xcel who worked there had watched my video or been told about it through my video, went and turned our power back on that night. I don't know who it was. thank you to that person. We really appreciate it. And they kind of went above and beyond and around company policy to get power back onto these people as well. So in the end, making this video and talking about it helped and got these people their power back. Because, I mean, we were trying to figure out, do we need to buy them hotel rooms? Do we need to get them all heaters? We were trying to talk to tenants to figure out, like, what they preferred, what we could do. And thankfully, like I said, we kind of figured out how to get the boiler working that night, and then we figured out that someone else had also turned on the power kind of at the same time. I'm not really sure which one happened first, but we got it done and we got it worked out. But that's another issue in cold weather. Don't pay your electric bill. There's a lot of places that have laws against turning off your power in winter, but still, it can still happen. You can still have issues. You can still have... All right, now, other people's problems can also turn into our opportunities as well, because sometimes we buy properties have had these issues too. And sometimes, like this property, I believe they filed an insurance claim, took the money, ran with it, and sold the house as it was. And we may have been dumb enough to buy it and try and fix it. So it can work out in other ways too. Now, one thing I would want to add before we get too far on this, cold weather isn't just for frozen pipes or damage to houses. We have a lot of tenants who don't communicate well with us, so we always have problems and issues with cold weather on furnaces breaking, boilers going down, things like that happening. I don't know if it's the stress of just working overtime, but a lot of times heating systems break when it's really, really cold. In fact, we just got a call today. The boiler at the depot in Aplex we're working on right now went down. The boiler turned off. We're like, oh my God, and it's fairly new. It should work fine. We got a company go out there. They checked it out. They said the ignition switch or igniter was really dirty and clogged up. They got it cleaned up. It's working okay. We're like, thank you. In other instances, we've had tenants who said, oh, you know, our heat hasn't been working very well for the last couple of months. We forgot to tell you, but now that it's -10, we really need it fixed. And the problem with that is these heating companies are working overtime like crazy in cold weather situations, and they might not have time to get there that day or the next day. Hopefully they do, but if there's a heating problem, if there's an HVAC issue, get it fixed before it gets too cold. If you're a tenant, let your landlord know before it gets too cold. Don't wait till it's too late and you can cause damage or have issues or everybody's so busy. All right, this house had frozen pipes upstairs, ran through the whole house. I did not see it before they gutted it, but this is how it looked when we bought it, because all the sheetrock had to be taken out. A lot of the flooring had to be taken out. It was a mess, but it was actually a really cool, neat house, and this was a fun one to do. But the previous owners obviously had some issues and things to deal with. Now, the story on this one was, I think the owners had let their kids move into it, and the kids had left and turned off the heat or something like that, and they left for like weeks or months, came back, and the house was completely flooded and destroyed, and had been like that for a while. So they had to tear out so much of it. Again, I think the owners took the insurance money, decided, hey, instead of fixing it up, we'll just sell it as it is and go that route. And honestly, I can't blame people for doing that, just because it's such a pain to fix up properties and find contractors and do all that work right now. And you never know if the insurance money is going to cover all those costs. When you're brand new to it, you're trying to find new people. It can be a huge pain, a massive undertaking, where it's what we do all the time, every day. So it's a little easier for us to do. This was an old farmhouse, had a really nice shop, had some additions, cool property, and it was a fun flip. But the reason we were able to flip it and get this opportunity is because of frozen pipes and people not turning the heat on and leaving. So if you see a common theme here, that is one of them. All right, we're nearing the end of this video. I've covered just about everything I wanted to cover, but some things to just recap. Make sure your heat's working. If you go on vacation, don't turn your heat off. Leave it on. If you leave the house, leave your heat on. Make sure that if you don't have heat and you have a vacant property, it's winterized, at least the water's turned off. You've done some things to prevent serious damage. If you're working on a house, try to turn the water off if you don't need it, just because you never know what could happen in a construction setting. Make sure your power bills are paid and your gas bills are paid. Those are important, even though sometimes you can't always know if they're being paid or not, apparently, if the power company won't tell you what bills should be in your name. That was an issue. Make sure your properties are well insulated. Try to limit pipes on outside walls if you can. There's a lot of things you can do, and plumbers should help you out with that and figuring out what's good and what's bad practices as far as keeping houses from freezing. So there's a lot you can do, a lot of situations that are just going to happen. But if you do have a problem, if you do have an issue, just remember, try and get the water out as quickly as possible. Try and dry it out as quick as possible. Try to avoid mold situations, and that can help limit and mitigate some of your damage. And then, of course, if you do have a frozen pipe, a situation with water, obviously you want to try and fix that situation so it doesn't happen again. So if it is on an outside wall, if there is a problem, structurally, try and fix that so it doesn't just keep happening year after year after year after year. There's the flood cut I was talking about earlier. I knew one of the videos would have it. All right. Thanks for watching. That's all I've got. Let me know what you think. I'll try to add a link to each of these properties so you can see the full videos. And we'll be back with more videos on my properties, our projects, businesses coming up here soon.